Hi, I'm Alex from the Zscaler Customer Success and Engineering team. In this series of short videos, we're taking a look at the baseline recommendations for the inspection of TLS encrypted web traffic. This is part 2, what you should inspect. Now that we've talked about the risks that are inherent to not inspecting your traffic and why it matters that you do so, let's talk about what you should inspect. First, it's important to note that TLS as a protocol exists to secure communication between browser and server and make sure that that communication can be intercepted or tampered with. It's also important to know that as a result of this encryption, firewalls, DLP policies, IDP, IDS, etc., all of the security controls that we normally leverage to protect our users, our data, and our devices are blind to this communication. The goal then is to manage to strike the right balance between privacy and security to protect your users, their devices, their data, and your corporate network from malware or data loss without negatively impacting privacy. The question then becomes, what traffic should you inspect? And the answer to this is actually fairly simple, if extensive. You should inspect as much user-initiated HTTPS traffic as possible, whether it comes from a browser or an application within the user's session on their device. And you should especially make sure to inspect as much traffic as possible from devices that are connected to the corporate network, since those devices can be an entry point for malware or for attackers who then would gain access to your network and the ability to move laterally. It's important to understand that there are things that are off limits to SSL inspection. There are things that we cannot and won't inspect. For example, we can't inspect guest traffic, IoT or OT traffic, or BYOD traffic for devices that don't have the SSL certificate installed. This is because SSL inspection requires a certificate to be present on the device, and those devices are unmanaged or don't have a certificate store. We can't inspect applications that do certificate pinning or client certificate authentication. And there is a small number of ciphers that aren't supported. Generally, these are legacy ciphers, but if this is a cipher that is not supported, then it's not possible for us to do SSL inspection. For both these things, there are articles on the Zscaler help website that cover unsupported ciphers as well as applications that commonly are known to do certificate pinning. It's worth noting that this list of applications that do certificate pinning comes with domains, and these are example domains. By no means should you simply bypass from SSL inspection any domain that belongs to this list. As far as things that won't be inspected, there are a few, such as voice and video traffic for UCaaS applications, since this doesn't pose any security risk. And then this one's a bit of a catch-all, but any categories that are restricted by HR, work council agreements, privacy laws, etc. in your country. Some examples of categories that might be restricted like this are the finance or healthcare categories, where you may not be able to or not want to inspect transactions between users and their healthcare provider or their bank when they're accessing those from your corporate network. One thing that's important to note is that threats are not only in categories that are known to be dangerous, such as the miscellaneous or unknown category. Here we have a table that contains the percent of detections for threats in non-threat categories. This means we've excluded from this total any of the known threat categories, the malware category, the phishing category, etc., as obviously 100% of the traffic in those categories is malicious. Here we can see that nearly 44% of all threats that are found in non-threat categories are inside the professional services category, 23% are inside corporate marketing, about 9% are inside CDN, about 5% are inside internet services, and so forth and so on. These proportions are fairly normal, since from the URL classification perspective, most corporate websites will generally fall within the professional services or corporate marketing categories, for example. So while these proportions are now not out of line with the proportion of websites in those categories, it's important to understand that just because a category is a common business category doesn't mean that it's safe. So you should inspect all categories as much as possible, except for the few that you've deemed are not inspectable, in order to make sure that you're securing your traffic, your users, your data, your devices, and your network. That's it for this video. Join me in the next part where we talk about how you can start inspecting your traffic.